Hi. So Bless Mazarura is an artist, a fashion designer, a man of many trades. He is a Montserrat alum and actually attended Montserrat College of Art for graphic design. So I don't think when he was a college student, he knew what he was going to grow up to be. So I think that's part of what we'll be talking about today. We have quite a few graphic design majors or type artists in this class here. But yeah, Bless, I will let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Julia. And so first of all, thank you for having me on the class. Appreciate it. And hello to everybody. Thank you for being here, even though, of course, you have to be here. It's your class, but I appreciate you listening to me. So I figured I could just start with a little bit of history on myself, because, you know, at some point I was sitting where you guys are at Montserrat. This is back in '94, so it's quite a while back. So I figured I'd just start with my journey because it might put things in perspective as to some of the choices that I made and continue to make today, because I kind of had a bit of a journey that I didn't have too many options and choices, and I went this entrepreneurial way by the nature of the situation that I found myself. So my full name is Blessing. My last name is Mazarura. I was born in Zimbabwe, outskirts of the city, small rural town. Fortunately for me, when I was younger, I did, I did very well as far as academically. And my dad kept making these promises in regards to how he would reward me if I kept doing well. So at some point, high school, he told me if I did, did great in my grades, I got to choose where I wanted to go after high school. So I did well, and I said, I want to go to America. And he was like, oh, okay. But he had to live up to his promises. So he said, okay, we can figure it out, because we weren't financially able to afford that. But he figured, this was what I wanted to do, and we had to give it a shot. So fast forward after that, I started figuring out where, he asked me a few questions in regards to where I was going to go. And so I said, okay. So I went to a library just to figure things out. And once I got to the library, I realized that there was, 52 states. And I was like, okay, so what do we do here? So I found this other book that said, well, when you want to come to college or university in America, in that state, you may look at different cities, and all those different cities, then you can look at the schools there, then you can look at universities and colleges and so on. So as you can imagine, when you're looking at this entire country as an option, it's pretty overwhelming. So I didn't know, how do you pick a state? I don't know anything about any of the states, because at that point, this is not like Google and social media world. This is nothing. So I basically was looking at a list of the states of the United States, and I came across Massachusetts, and I couldn't pronounce it. And I figured it would be really cool if one day I can look at the people back home and tell them I'm from. So I think I can't even start to tell you what I called it, but I said one day I'll look, people say, where are you? And I'll say I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. And I said, that sounds really cool. So that's how I picked Massachusetts, just literally looking at a book, and I said, it sounds cool. So I picked Massachusetts. So I went to the colleges in Massachusetts, and I'm looking at them, and I saw, BU, BC, and I'm looking at the number of students that are there. And it freaked me out because, say 20,000 students. And I'm like, I'm gonna come from a small little town in Africa and end up in a college with 20,000 students. That was too intimidating for me. So lo and behold, however way it happened, and I'm talking about a little obscure school outside of, out in Zimbabwe somewhere, I found this catalog, and it was a Montserrat College of Art catalog. So all the schools in the whole country, this was one of the schools that had its own little catalog, and it wasn't in the big, who's who American college and universities. So I took this book and I looked, and the first thing I saw, it says 500, it said 450 students. And I was like, okay, this is good. It said it's by the beach. And I said, okay, this is amazing. I was like, so we're by the beach, and it's small. And I was like, I love it. This is it. It's close to Boston. It's not in the city. So I applied. And then as fate would have it, one of the women in the admissions all of a sudden started calling my dad's office, because we didn't have a phone at the house. kept calling the office until one day I had to go sit there and wait for her to call, because she was like, tell him I'll call on this day. So I sat for her. I get on the phone, she starts screaming, and she's like, when I was pregnant with my second son, my husband was called to Zimbabwe by the Rhodesian government, which is the country before before it became Zimbabwe. And he was stationed there for the military. And so my second son was born in Zimbabwe. So you have to come to this school. So all these things, are important to, I'm telling you all these things, which, in some way have no relevancy, but this is basically how I do my decision process as far as business and everything else. I try to follow what the universe and life is presenting in front of me. And I feel like sometimes the options and the directions are very clear based on emotion and feeling. So Lena tells me to come to the school. She pushes really hard for me. That's how I ended up in Montserrat. And once I did get to Montserrat, again, now I got off at Logan, and for the first time I realized this might have been a big mistake, because I had nobody to call. It was 11 o'clock at night, the plane was delayed. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know anything but the country. And so at this point, I may feel like someone would feel when they get out of college, when you're like, okay, so now I want to start my business. Where do I start? What do I do? I don't know anybody that does what I want to do. I don't know anybody that wants to major in the thing that I want to do. So this is kind of like the parallel I'm drawing based on the things that I went through and how they all translated to the decisions that I make and what helps me do what I do now. So at that point, I'm on this island, basically. I don't know a single soul in the country. I don't have a single phone number to call, absolutely nothing. So I go outside, I catch a taxi, I get dropped off in front of the school, Hardy building. And the guy, even today, I think it's a ridiculous amount. The guy charges me $100 for the ride. And I'm like, oh, okay, that doesn't sound bad. Until I spoke to someone the next day, they're like, it's a $35 flat fee from the airport. So at that point, again, you're in this world, you trying to navigate your place, find out what you would love to do, how you would do it. If you're an artist, a lot of times you realize your ideas are unique. A lot of people are not going to back you up. And you have a lot of roadblocks, and this may discourage you you should go back home, you should just try and get a job. This is the part where I think it's important. So for me, I realized, okay, I definitely not going back home. And so at that point, I just started making decisions in terms of I had to build what I call now, I have a charity called the Army of Love. So at that point, I decided I have to build my own army, my own network, my own tribe. So this was not a conscious decision then. This was just natural because, it's sink or swim. But I did realize I don't have any friends. So I needed friends. And by friends, I just needed to be in a safe place, knowing who's a good person and who's not, and who not more as what can I get from anybody, but rather I need to be around people that I can trust, that can understand my position, because the first person that I met in the country just took $75 from me. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I have to be very careful. So once I was in the school, then the journey started of just trying to meet a good person and be able to differentiate between what's good for myself and my advancement and myself as a person and my values and my morals versus what is fun or what is everybody else doing or what am I supposed to do based on my parents or, the naysayers. So anyways, I ended up in Montserrat. I loved the school and I went for graphic design. But the greatest thing that happened with me there was the idea of being an individual. So I had guys in my class in the beginning where one of the guys there, you'd walk around with a cat and they would walk the cat. And at some point, they would walk into the class with the cat. And so I'd be looking around waiting for, something to happen. I'm like, he's got a cat, and they would bring their cat in, and whatever class it was, they were able to bring their cat into class. So it was just a sign for me where I was like, okay, so you can be who you are, and people might laugh and people might question your direction, your mission, your purpose. But if you just are who you are, this was a safe haven for people who are super creative, very, individualistic, and the atmosphere was very pro that. So that's why I loved the school, and I kind of learned how to say, I'm not good at drawing and painting. I'm an artist. Because I was like, oh, so I'm an artist, because I was getting that idea that, you know, I'm an artist. So fast forward to when I was now in the outside world, I think one of the biggest things that was super important to me was, as soon as you step into whatever arena it is, whether you coming from Zimbabwe into America or you're now going into business, I realized that you quickly have to figure out who you are. Because I have a mentor of mine who's a director at the Los Anderson Museum of Los Anderson Auto Museum in Brookline. And he said, when you want to, he said, you have to control the opinion people have of you by giving it to them. So in other words, everybody that looks at you is going to have an opinion, but you should actually know that that opinion that they come up with can be one that you gave them subconsciously, so to say. So you don't have to say, I am this, but just by what you say and what you present, you have to control what they're going to feel. And if you can do that, then whether it's a business deal, whether you're presenting your art, or whether you're walking into a big office, so one of the things I do in fashion design is I did hotel uniforms for big multi-million-dollar hotels like Marriott Group of Hotels, W Hotels. I did uniforms for them. So I'd curate uniforms for the front desk and the staff. And when I got my first hotel meeting, it was for a new hotel. I mean, not the first, sorry, after a year or so. My first big one was a hotel called Envoy, which is in Seaport, Boston. So they had spent $90 million to build this hotel. And they were like, hey, the owners and the execs and the investors would like to speak to you to present, to design, you know, to show the uniform ideas. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a $90 million hotel, and I'm just an individual, just an artist. Yes, I can do something, but you get the nerves, you get to be a little bit uncertain about yourself and not sure whether it's good enough, because as an artist, you're also very hard on yourself. So basically at that point, what I said to myself is, if I walk in there and basically am very, very confident with the little bit that I know, then it's going to be the best shot that I can give. And at that point, if they don't like it, then it doesn't matter, because I'm not good enough for the job, because I gave them everything that I have. The one thing I did not want to do was go in there and be like half nervous, unsure. Then they don't give me the job, and I get to say, I wish I had my nerves together, and I would have got the job. So with that said, what I did is I got my, I put on my suit and I put on my tie and I went all three pieces. Then I said, but that's, it wasn't me. I'm more very casual, half. So I put on my suit and I put a tank top up under my suit, and I took my little vintage briefcase I found at the antique store down the street, and I put all my stuff in my briefcase and I walked in. And then as soon as I walked in and they were like, okay, Bless, time for you to present, I went to the front. And one of the owners goes, I've never seen a guy wear a suit with a tank top. Wow, that looks amazing. And then all of a sudden, automatically, I was like, okay, cool. So I felt like right there, again, it's about being yourself, and yet at the same time, understanding the rules. Because if I wear a three-piece suit, I usually don't do that. But I can wear a suit. I love to wear a suit jacket and pants, and then I wear a tank top. So again, it's like a balance of like, be who you are, but be confident that that's going to have to be accepted, but there's a little bit of adjusting, because you can't be totalitarian where you're like, this is me, I'm an artist, I'm gonna walk in there in my sweatpants and a tank top and I don't care. So it's like all about balance. So anyway, once I went in there, I had a really great presentation, and then I ended up getting the job, and I started designing uniforms for them. And then, that led me to another bunch of like the Revere Hotel and other hotels that ended up hiring me based on seeing my work. So that's basically kind of like my history and how I got, from Zimbabwe to Montserrat. And this was kind of like, now I'm at a part where I'm starting to do work and business. So I think a very important thing, if I'm to give advice, obviously this is my advice on what's helped me. But one most important thing I felt is just, again, knowing who you are as an individual and what you would like to say to people or present to people. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch the Alan Watts video that I sent. that is just somebody that I agree with a lot of values and things that he says. And one of the things that I was trying to get across with the video was the whole idea of balance, which is where you're an artist and you're absolutely creative. And then all of a sudden now you're presented with business, which is in many ways seems to be the opposite of what your nature is, as far as if you constrict yourself too much on a canvas or in your process, then you feel restricted. And then when you get into business, especially for myself, numbers, you don't estimate in numbers. If you do, it ends up not so great. So now in business, you're restricted to so many formulas. You can't be yourself, you can't be creative. So now I think what's important when you find yourself in this space is to understand that at the end of the day, when we look at everything that's going on as far as art and business, there is a way to look at it where you realize that it's one and the same. And what I mean by that is when you look, a lot of people look at artists, for example, and you're an artist. And there's this whole idea of you're just a creative, you're not serious about life, you're not serious about business, you don't have the capabilities to do certain things. But when we look at architecture, we look at our bridges, we look at the cars we drive, we look at everything that we're using now to communicate, this is all coming from a creative side, from artists. So in some way, shape, or form, there is a lot of things that are being run by art under the disguise as being business. So we are actually already business people, it's within us. And we don't have to be afraid and have this wall of thinking business is 100% different from art. Just like Alan Watts was saying, the wave has the crest and, and trough from the bottom. We have creative, but at the same time with business, it's one and the same. So what I use as a formula is basically understanding that we all already have networking in us. If you have friends, you already network. We all already have planning. We all already have the idea of creating a brand. All these things are within us, but they're so natural that we don't realize that we are already business people as individuals with everything that we do in our daily life. So you get to this point where you get these things when they're presented, they're intimidating, and a lot of business people push to art and almost look to art as almost very playful. But every single business person, when they make a lot of money, the first thing you say, okay, what would you like to do? They say, I'd like to celebrate and go dancing and maybe, go to this festival or go to this play. As soon as everybody has money, the first thing they do is they run to creativity, because we're really all just feeding each other in the same way. So all our souls at the bottom of everything else are creative. And in that, even the business guy is looking at creativity as a way of celebrating or actually utilizing the money that they make. So anyway, I wanted to show you guys a little bit of work as far as some of the things that I've done. And there's a lot of resources, which I think what I'll do is sometime later this week or early next week, I'd love to send a list of some of the resources that I use in regards of legalizing business names. And because a lot of times people get intimidated. They're like, well, how do I even start the company? How do I do my taxes? How do I get to register a company? How do I, so there's so many questions. So there's a lot of tools, and they're so easy, and they're out there. If you Google and you hire someone right off the bat, it might be super expensive. Just like if you tell someone, I want to do a mailing and I need to do this, they'll charge you a lot of money. But if you go on MailChimp and you design, your nice template, and you find a way of collecting email addresses and getting a database, then it's not that hard to send that email out. It's not that hard to automate, send things out automatically. So I think it's just all about knowing the resources. So what I will do is, obviously, if you guys want, I can give you some of the resources that I've used as a business person that have been super helpful, especially with the legal part, because I think some people just stop at, how do you even start a company, and to me, it's well, you already kind of are a company, and all you have to do now at this point is just talk to the government and say, I'm here. So I'm going to share a screen. I'll show you some of my work and maybe just talk about it a little bit, which will give you an idea of what I do. And then I'll speak on the challenges and how I kind of get over to this place where I'm really just a one-man show, and I have an assistant now, but most of my life I have people coming in and helping, but I have to kind of be the accountant, be the tax person, be the designer, be the marketing, be the sales, take the phone calls, sweep the floor. So it's really tough, but at the end, this is what it looks like for me, and I'd like to share that. So 1 second, I sometimes get, okay, we're gonna present, and we'll do present here. Am I, and let's see, I'm gonna see, blah, blah, blah. All right, I'm gonna choose slides. Okay, let's share this. And then we're gonna present. All right, can we see?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, great. All right, so let me just take this to slide 1, actually. So this is some of the new items that I'm working on. So these are things I'm making in the studio, working with manufacturers, and it's just, I love black. This is like my color, to a fault, actually, but so I work with a lot of black, I work with a lot of gender fluid pieces, and I just love the idea of like, empowerment, the idea of making you feel special. And again, like when people need an opinion of you, I feel like you have to build it. So when I build these pieces, I want this girl to walk in and everybody say, okay, like she's very fashionable, or she's very edgy, because that's what I want my clothes to. So in the same way, as a business person, if you want to come across as creative and come across as aggressive or as calm or as whatever, then you get to be that if you design it that way and present yourself that way. And this is just like one of my pieces. I always make these multi, like reversible, convertible pieces. Will this for us? It actually displays, let's see, turn the volume up. So it displays, this is just my assistant displaying the same top. So it wears as a top, and then you saw it as a little shawl that's on the side. And then, so you have it this way, and then, okay, wear it like almost like a cape. And then you can also wrap it around and just wear it like a scarf. So this is basically like, in so many words, and then you can wear it just as a little top that comes over front, just versatile. So this is basically what my MO is in life. Like, there's more than one way to skin the cat, and there's more than one way in which you can be viewed as, why are you useful, and how do you work, and how does it work? So the more you can present in that sense, then the more opportunity you can have, and the more you actually expose yourself to. So this is another one of my pieces. Then here I got just some blazers, and one of my favorite coats is here. It's my time traveler coat, some winter puffy coats. We're focusing a lot on the winter clothes because it's gonna get cold. Okay, so that's one. And let me see if I can go back and I can present. So next I'm gonna present to you this. I just got an investor who invested in my business, and this was the presentation that I used when I was showing the vision of a store that we're going to have in the future, and my idea and the aesthetic. So I think presentation, as artists, we have such a big advantage, but we should present. When you present things, I feel like professionally, you get a big chance of showing your vision better than someone who doesn't have the ability to work with art, make an installation, paint something. So these are some of my dresses. And then this was just basically a deck that describes my vision, where I'm trying to go, more of my clothes. And this was the concept for the store. It would be a very minimal store that looks like a gallery. This is like basically an essence chart of all the things. Again, when I define who I am, when I want to walk in the room, I already know that these words, when you look at my clothes, you should associate them with these words. When you see me and when I speak to you, you should associate me with these words. So everything that I do comes out of this board. So I wanted to be pragmatic. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be minimalist. I wanted to be luxury. You know, I wanted to be wrapped in love. And if you can see on when I go back to video on my floor, there's a couple of letters. That's because I got a giant love on the floor. And that's why love is the most prominent on the page. Free spirit, seductive, you know, Vogue, exclusive, iconic, philanthropic. So this is my board. So when you ask me who I am, this is my board that takes everything that I am. And so when I do things, they have to check off this board. If they don't, they're out of character, and I am not fulfilling like my, you know, my mission and what I'm trying to do. So these are some photo shoots I've done. I try to clean everything. When I look at competition, I try not to look at my neighbor. I try to look at who is the best that's doing what I'm doing. And I go to them, and they are the ones that are to teach me if I'm, you know, if I'm getting there or not. So sometimes you get that my baby feeling where you like, it's your baby. Every mother, every father, my baby's the cutest thing. So sometimes we take our work and we think it's the cutest just because it's ours. I like to push myself. I like to look at whoever's doing it the best. And I have to, in some way, shape, or form, be trying to position myself to look like them. If I'm not, then I'm just gonna maybe do it in my little town and not to a bigger place. This is just, for example, like a network with people that I've grown since Montserrat. You know, I just have the pride that I got here and I didn't know a single person. And I now have, you know, I have a mom here, you know, and I don't know if she's still logged in because she's logged on with us. So I've just been able to, I've been proud. I didn't mean to, but obviously I found myself being alone. I found myself, I've got a mom here. I got business advisors from Harvard. I got patent attorneys. You know, all these people are just very prominent people who have seen my like mission and jumped in, and, you know, tax attorneys and directors. And these are all people I've just met by sitting. A lot of times I actually offer them help first. Like I try to find out what it is that they do or they need. And that's the Army of Love, which is, you know, dear to my heart, of course, because again, the idea of whatever you want to take from the world, you have to give back, and then that's how you get the balance. So the Army of Love is just how I make a prominent effort of giving back to the universe. And through that, that's where I meet all these business directors and all these, you know, philanthropists and business people, because they, you know, I don't do this to meet them, but they just become a part of the journey. So this is just the goal. I have a dream of water. I want to basically have water, and then we're going to basically get into accessories and get into like other knickknacks like perfumes and stuff. So the dream is big and huge. Then last thing I'll show before I finish off is I think I just had another, okay, just another couple of pieces of clothes. So we'll present this if it ever loads. Okay, here we go. So this is, again, some of my things that I'm supposed to launch this November. Everything is a bit crazy, a little bit behind, but from November probably till January, these are some of the things that we'll be launching. And I try to work with models of all ethnicities, all walks of life, just to kind of show that I have the same thing that I keep preaching about, which is the idea of so that's the clothes. The idea of just basically being such a versatile person that fits. So last thing I'll say is I think just know that all of us that are on this call, when we were born, there was a doctor, an athlete, a scientist, an astronaut, you know, a lawyer, a teacher, a banker. All of us were those things when we were born, because once you come into this earth, then you basically have everything in regards to anything that you want to be is already inside of you. Obviously, once we start to go through life, we now get to start to be formed by our environment in regards of what we can do or what we can't. So we all are business people every day. We negotiate with friends. When your friend is like, hey, do you want to swap, you know, your shoes for my t-shirt? And you're like, nah, that's not worth it. You know, you're talking value. And you're like, well, if you give me your shoes and your hat. So we've all been negotiating. We've all been doing business. We've all been networking. We've all been doing all this stuff. Even when you're just like, I can't afford that jacket. You're budgeting, right? Or you're like, I'm going to save some money and I'm going to go back to that store and buy those sneakers, or I'm going to wait for my birthday. So we all are business people already. And I think the one thing I just want to leave you guys with is you already have it as far as business. Now, I'm still on a journey. I still have a long way to go. But when I consider myself getting off that plane and having, I think it was 400 something dollars. And then the guy took the 100. So I had like $300 when I came to Montserrat. I had $300 and then I had to get the job and start to do everything. So considering that, and then everything that I feel like I've shown today, I feel like I've done well. Now, have I done well that I have a mansion by the ocean? I don't. But if I had to stop today, I would literally put my hands on my hips and say, I did it, you know, because the success is not based on what other people, I'm not comparing myself to some billionaire or millionaire person, but I'm comparing myself to the guy that got off the plane with $300 and I just attained everything. So in the same way with you, is the only competition you have is yourself, right? That's the only person you measure. You just say, yesterday, could I do my taxes or did I have a company? No. The next day you registered a company, you're winning. And that's just for you. And then the next day, so if someone comes in and goes, but what has your company done? You're like, but I just made it and I just did it. So that's it. And so I think at the end of it, just choose who you are. And even when you do business, what I usually like to say is try to personify your business. Let's say choose an animal that would represent your business. So for example, if it's like fast and high soaring and aggressive and quick, and then that's an eagle. And then you start to study, how does an eagle maneuver? How does it look? Is it aggressive? So, you know, it's like everything that you do can be personified into something that you already have that's around us. That way you can just know who it is and what it is you want to do, personify it into something. Anyway, so I'm talking for 7:30 and I'm on 7:33 because I talk a lot. So I'm done.
Thank you so much, Bless. That was amazing to hear all of your kind of background and story and the ambitions that you have. You're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.